Serato like that, but you know, then I could back into my preset sounds. Like some Bad Monkeys and over the record label we set up. So. And this is a bit better than me just DJing. I can DJ, I can scratch, but because I can do, I'm not the best at everything, yeah. But because I can combine them all, why not? That's what I think. Anyway. It was like about 599. It's about 4. And you know that's. No, thank you, man. Thank you. Dragonfly and Stag.
See you later. See you. Palms.
And this just means 8 samples. This uses a Tiffany. And the samples are installed during install, and it's the own collection of ours is inside of it. You also can load your
control of it.
Do the basic groove and then you go back into some other stuff and it sounds like you're a proper percussionist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Very good contract.
It's a good way of doing it. And the cables and everything are all part of the system, not those. The speaker cables, pretty chunky things. And they come as standard 3 meters, so you can put this box next to you where you're working. And that has the big advantage of not having to climb over your desk or whatever. You get round to the back of the speaker every time, even if you just want to switch it off, you've got to climb around the back. And it also means you can do all these trims and EQs while you're actually sitting in the mix position, which is quite a useful thing. These are all sort of consequences of the design rather than actually design goals in themselves, but it all adds up to making life a little bit easier when you're actually working at the desk. What else can I say? What have I missed out on?
You've done the lights.
The lights, yeah. Not on these ones, but on the bigger ones, there are actually LEDs which are recessed into the front face of the speaker. And the idea of that is that when you're sitting in the correct mix position, you can actually see the LEDs on both speakers. And if you're not in the right position, you won't see them. So, and the reason for that is, although all loudspeakers of this sort basically have reasonably good horizontal polar response, they've all got absolutely awful vertical polar response. So it's very important to angle the speaker vertically to the right angle to your ears, because you've only got to be about 20 degrees off axis with a speaker, any speaker like this, and you start getting notch filters. You've probably seen, if you look in a diagram of a JBL speaker or whatever, you'll see that they show the polar diagrams, and the vertical one always has these mid-range notches if you're off axis. And there's nothing you can do about it. It's to do with the time delay difference between the drivers. As you go up, the time delay to the tweeter is less than the one to the woofer, so you get this interference notch filter. So the idea of the LED is that you can be guaranteed not to have it as long as you can see the LEDs. Just little things like that that have sort of accumulated as ideas over the years that have all gone onto these speakers. But the main thing about them basically is that they're just neutral, very, very neutral. So much so that you can actually stand behind the speaker and listen to it, and it sounds like the correct balance, just quieter, that's all. And there aren't many speakers that you can do that with. The only slight downside of that, in a way, is that it also means that the room is getting a pretty good fill of the sound. And that means that your room does need to have some kind of reasonable acoustic, because these speakers are going to sort of excite the room a little bit more than other speakers do. But it will give you a more natural balance if you do it correctly. And a lot of speakers that don't don't have that sort of neutral power response, as it's called, can actually give you quite a false impression of the sound. And I'm not going to mention any other manufacturers, but some speakers where the speaker's more directional or sort of horn loaded in a certain way. There's nothing wrong with horns as such, but just the way the speaker's tuned. Sometimes the room isn't getting a decent sound balance. You get too much bottom end relative to the top end. So what comes back from the room isn't neutral either, and it can. That's the biggest single reason why loudspeakers sound different. If you line up 6 near fields, all of which have got perfect responses, because that's all anyone ever shows you, but they all sound different. And the reason isn't because of the frequency response, it's because of the power response, and it's what that speaker's doing in the room, and that's why you hear differences. So these are about as neutral as you can get in that respect. Other than that, you know, you've got to bear in mind that the bass response of the speaker is going to be affected by the room anyway, which we have these, why we have these trim pots at the bottom end. Even when you're 1 metre away from a loudspeaker, the wavefront, if you like, of that loudspeaker is 13 square metres. So if you imagine a big balloon around that speaker, 13 square metres would be the surface area of that. So that's the amount of sound that's going out from the speaker. But your ear's not very big. It's about 0.04 square metres actually, 2 of them. So it's 0.04 divided by 13 multiplied by 100 will give you the percentage of the sound that you actually hear direct. And I'll save you the trouble of working it out. It's about 98% plus of the sound goes to the room, not to your ear directly. So it doesn't matter what speaker you're listening to, the room is going to have an effect on it, for sure, unless you're about 6 inches away from it. So do bear in mind that even with a pair of near fields, you do need to have some kind of acoustic control.